Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to talk about something that might sound counterintuitive in a world obsessed with being seen, heard, and noticed. The title of this talk is It's Time to Disappear. I know, just hearing that might make you squirm a little. In a culture that equates visibility with value, the idea of disappearing can feel terrifying, even wrong. We're told to build our brands, post our highlights, show up louder, and claim our space. But what if I told you that some of the most profound transformations in life, the ones that truly shape us, happen when we step out of the spotlight, quiet the noise, and disappear for a while? Disappearing isn't about retreating in fear or giving up. It's about choosing stillness in a world that glorifies busyness. It's about letting go of the performance and reconnecting with the person behind it. It's about trading the exhausting chase for external validation for the quiet work of rediscovering who you are when no one else is looking. We live in a time when we're constantly told to hustle, grind, and produce, but sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is stop. To step back, to disappear into yourself, and to ask the hard questions, am I chasing a life that's true to me or one that's been prescribed by others? Am I showing up authentically, or am I wearing masks that keep me palatable to the world? This disappearing act isn't about abandoning your life. It's about shedding the layers that no longer serve you. It's about creating space to heal, to dream, and to come back stronger, clearer, and more aligned with your values. Think about the caterpillar. Before it becomes a butterfly, it disappears into the cocoon. In that still, quiet place, something miraculous happens. It doesn't just grow wings. It dissolves, breaks apart, and rebuilds itself entirely. Disappearing isn't the end of the story, it's the beginning of becoming. And I want you to know this: disappearing takes bravery. It takes vulnerability. It means saying no to the world's demands so you can say yes to your soul's needs. It means embracing uncertainty and trusting that even when you feel lost, you are never truly adrift. You are recalibrating. You are realigning. You are finding your way back to yourself. So if you're in a season of disappearing, or if you feel called to enter one, don't resist it. Don't let fear or guilt tell you it's selfish to step away. Instead, lean into it. Give yourself permission to be messy, to rest, to question, to explore. Because when you come out on the other side, you won't just be back. You'll be whole. And the truth is, the world doesn't need a louder, shinier version of you. It needs the real you. The you that's been shaped by stillness, refined by reflection, and strengthened by silence. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'll leave you with this: disappearing isn't about hiding. It's about honoring. It's about honoring the journey of unbecoming everything you were told you should be so you can become everything you truly are. It's not just time to disappear. It's time to transform. Disappearing is an act of courage, not retreat. In a society that glorifies constant productivity and rewards visibility, stepping away from it all can feel like an act of defiance. It goes against everything we've been conditioned to believe about what it means to succeed, to matter, to belong. Yet, disappearing is not about running away or avoiding responsibility. It's about choosing yourself in a world that often demands you sacrifice your well-being for the sake of appearances. It takes courage to say, I need time, I need space, I need to step back. Courage is not always about charging forward. Sometimes it's about knowing when to pause. And it's hard. Disappearing challenges the narrative that your worth is tied to how much you're doing, how visible you are, or how many people approve of you. It forces you to confront uncomfortable truths about yourself, about the ways you've been showing up, and about the things you've been prioritizing. This confrontation can be unsettling, but it's also necessary. The act of disappearing requires a deep trust in yourself, a belief that even when you step back, you are still enough. When you choose to disappear, you're stepping into vulnerability. You're acknowledging that you can't keep going at the same pace, carrying the same weight, and pretending that everything is fine. Disappearing is admitting that you need a break, and for many of us, that feels like weakness. But the truth is, it takes immense strength to admit that you need time to recalibrate, to heal, and to figure out what truly matters to you. Disappearing is not about quitting, it's about pausing so that you can show up more authentically when you return. This act of courage also involves a willingness to face the unknown. When you disappear, you're stepping into a space where there are no guarantees, no clear outcomes, and no immediate rewards. You don't know how long it will take to find clarity. And that's terrifying. We're used to measuring our worth by tangible results, by how quickly we can achieve something. Disappearing asks you to let go of those measures and trust the process instead. It asks you to believe that stepping back doesn't mean falling behind, it means realigning with a path that feels truer to you. In a world that constantly pushes you to show up and be seen, disappearing is radical. It's saying no to the external pressures and yes to your internal needs. It's choosing authenticity over performance, well-being over burnout, and self-discovery over external approval. That choice is not easy. It might mean disappointing others or facing judgment. It might mean letting go of roles and identities you've clung to for years. But courage is not the absence of fear, it's moving forward despite it. Disappearing is a courageous act because it asks you to trust yourself in the face of that fear. It asks you to believe that stepping away doesn't diminish your worth, it strengthens it. True transformation happens in stillness and solitude. In a world that values noise, speed, and constant activity, the idea of slowing down or stepping away can feel foreign, even counterproductive. We've been conditioned to believe that progress only happens when we are actively working, striving, or achieving. But the reality is that transformation often requires us to pause, to be still, and to create space for deeper work to unfold. When we are caught up in the chaos of daily life, we rarely give ourselves the time to reflect or to understand what is truly driving us. Stillness allows us to do that. It provides the quiet necessary to hear the voice of our inner self, the one that gets drowned out by the demands and distractions of the external world. Solitude is equally essential to this process. In solitude, we are no longer performing for an audience or trying to meet someone else's expectations. We are alone with ourselves, and while that can be uncomfortable, it is also profoundly liberating. Solitude strips away the masks we wear and forces us to confront who we are beneath them. It is in this space free from judgment, comparison, and external validation that true transformation can begin. In solitude, we can ask ourselves the hard questions: who am I when no one else is watching? What do I want, not because it's expected of me, but because it feels true to me? Stillness and solitude create the conditions for transformation by allowing us to process what we've been carrying. Life moves quickly, and in the rush to keep up, we often suppress emotions, ignore our intuition, and overlook the lessons we're meant to learn. When we slow down and step into stillness, all of that begins to surface. At first, it might feel overwhelming. We may encounter pain, regret, or truths we've avoided, but this discomfort is a necessary part of the process. Transformation isn't about glossing over the hard parts, it's about moving through them. Stillness gives us the time and space to do this work with intention. Solitude also allows us to reconnect with our creativity and imagination. In the absence of constant input from the outside world, we can begin to dream again. We can envision new possibilities for our lives and tap into ideas and solutions that might have been buried beneath the noise. Transformation requires us to see things differently, and solitude helps us access the clarity and perspective needed to do that. It's not about isolating ourselves permanently, but about carving out time to step away from the world so we can return to it with new insight and purpose. In the stillness, we also learn to listen not just to ourselves, but to the rhythms of life. We begin to notice patterns and connections we might have missed before. We realize that growth doesn't always look like forward motion. Sometimes it looks like rest, reflection, or letting go. Transformation is not a linear process, and it cannot be rushed. It happens in the quiet moments when we allow ourselves to simply be. Stillness and solitude invite us to let go of striving and to embrace the natural unfolding of our journey. Letting go of external validation to reconnect with your authentic self is one of the most liberating yet challenging journeys you can undertake. From a young age, we are conditioned to seek approval. We learn to associate our worth with grades, praise, likes, promotions, and the acknowledgement of others. Over time, this constant pursuit of validation becomes second nature. We begin to craft our lives not around who we truly are, but around who we think the world wants us to be. This process can leave us feeling empty, disconnected, and perpetually striving for something that will never truly satisfy us. Reconnecting with your authentic self means breaking this cycle, but it requires the courage to stop looking outward for validation and to turn inward instead. The need for external validation runs deep. It can feel like a safety net, a measure of our success and value. But the problem with relying on external validation is that it is fleeting and conditional. It's based on the opinions, preferences, and perceptions of others, things we have no control over. One moment we feel on top of the world because of someone's praise, and the next we're questioning our worth because of their criticism. Living this way is exhausting. It keeps us stuck in a constant state of seeking approval, trying to mold ourselves into versions that fit someone else's narrative, even if it's at the expense of our own truth. Reconnecting with your authentic self means recognizing that your worth is not something that can be given or taken away by others. It is inherent, unchanging, and rooted in who you are, not in what you achieve or how others perceive you. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, reflection, and often unlearning the patterns and beliefs that have shaped you for years. It requires you to ask yourself hard questions. Am I living for myself or for the expectations of others? Am I making choices that align with my values or ones that will make me more likable or acceptable to others? These questions can be uncomfortable, but they are necessary for growth. Letting go of external validation also means being willing to disappoint others. This can be one of the hardest parts of the journey. When you start prioritizing your authentic self, there will inevitably be people who don't understand, who may feel let down or even reject you. This is painful, but it is also a powerful act of self-respect. It's a reminder that your primary responsibility is to live a life that feels true to you, not one that pleases everyone else. As you begin to detach from the need for external validation, you'll start to notice a shift. Instead of looking outward for approval, you'll turn inward for guidance. You'll begin to trust your intuition and honor your feelings. You'll learn to celebrate your accomplishments without needing someone else to recognize them. This doesn't mean you stop caring about others or their opinions. It means you stop letting them define your worth. Reconnecting with your authentic self is not about rejecting relationships or community. It's about showing up in those spaces as the real you, rather than the version of yourself you think you need to be to fit in. It's about finding freedom in the understanding that you are enough just as you are, no validation required. Disappearing creates space for healing, reflection, and realignment. In the relentless pace of life, we often move from one task, goal, or responsibility to the next without ever stopping to take stock of where we are or how we feel. We become so consumed by doing that we forget how to simply be. This constant forward motion can leave us depleted, disconnected, and carrying burdens we haven't even had the chance to fully process. Disappearing, stepping back, and carving out intentional time for ourselves gives us the space to pause, breathe, and address what's been left unresolved. It creates the necessary room for healing, allowing us to reconnect with the parts of ourselves we've neglected in the chaos. Healing cannot happen in a state of constant activity. When we are perpetually on the go, we suppress emotions, avoid difficult truths, and push through pain rather than addressing it. But healing requires stillness. It requires time and space to feel, to grieve, to let go, and to rebuild. Disappearing gives us permission to do this work without distraction or external pressure. It allows us to step away from the roles we play and the expectations placed upon us so that we can focus solely on our inner needs. This is not selfish, it's essential. Without healing, we carry wounds that continue to affect how we show up in our lives, our relationships, and the world. Reflection is another critical part of this process. Disappearing provides the opportunity to look inward and take an honest inventory of our lives. It's a chance to ask ourselves important questions. Am I living in alignment with my values? Am I holding on to things that no longer serve me? What patterns or beliefs might be keeping me stuck? These questions are not always easy to answer, and the process of reflection can be uncomfortable. But it is through this discomfort that clarity emerges. When we give ourselves the space to reflect, we begin to see what needs to change and what we need to let go of in order to move forward. Realignment is the natural result of this healing and reflection. Once we've created space to address our wounds and gain clarity about our lives, we can begin to realign with what truly matters to us. Disappearing helps us step away from the noise and expectations of the world so that we can hear our own voice again. It allows us to reconnect with our values, our passions, and our sense of purpose. Realignment is not about making drastic changes overnight. It's about gradually shifting toward a life that feels more authentic and fulfilling. It's about living in a way that reflects who we truly are, not who we think we're supposed to be. This process of healing, reflection, and realignment is deeply personal. No one else can do it for us, and no one else can dictate how it should look. Disappearing gives us the freedom to take this journey on our own terms, without judgment or comparison. It reminds us that it's okay to take a step back, to rest, and to prioritize our inner well-being. It's not about escaping life, it's about creating the space to return to it with greater clarity, strength, and authenticity. Shedding layers that no longer serve you is an essential part of growth and self-discovery. As we move through life, we accumulate identities, roles, beliefs, and habits that at one point may have felt necessary or helpful. These layers often develop as a means of survival, protection, or belonging. Perhaps we learn to stay quiet to avoid conflict, to overachieve to gain approval, or to conform to fit into certain social or professional spaces. But as we grow and evolve, these layers can start to weigh us down. What once served us may now hold us back, keeping us from living authentically and fully. Shedding these layers is not an easy process. It begins with awareness, recognizing the layers you've been carrying and understanding how they may no longer align with who you are or who you want to become. This awareness requires honesty and self-reflection. You have to be willing to ask yourself hard questions. Why am I holding on to this belief? Whose expectations am I trying to meet? Is this behavior or role truly serving me? Or am I clinging to it out of fear or habit? These questions can lead to uncomfortable realizations, but they are a necessary starting point. Once you've identified the layers that need to be shed, the next step is letting go. This is often the hardest part. Even when we know something is no longer serving us, letting it go can feel scary because it's familiar. It's what we've known, and stepping into the unknown is always uncomfortable. Letting go might mean setting boundaries, leaving behind relationships or environments that no longer feel right, or challenging long-held beliefs about yourself and the world. It can feel like losing a part of yourself. But it's important to remember that you're not losing the core of who you are. You're simply letting go of what no longer fits, making room for growth and transformation. This process also requires patience and compassion. Shedding layers doesn't happen overnight, and it's not a linear journey. There may be moments when you feel uncertain, vulnerable, or even regretful. That's normal. Growth is rarely easy or comfortable, but it's always worth it. Be kind to yourself as you navigate this process. Celebrate the small steps you take, and remind yourself that every layer you shed brings you closer to your authentic self. Shedding layers is about returning to the essence of who you are. It's about peeling away the external expectations, societal conditioning, and self-imposed limitations that have built up over time. It's about creating space for the truest version of yourself to emerge, one that is not defined by what others think or by the roles you've been playing, but by your values, passions, and desires. This process doesn't mean rejecting everything from your past, Some layers may still serve you, and others may hold valuable lessons. It's about discerning what to carry forward and what to leave behind so that you can move forward with clarity, freedom, and authenticity. Shedding layers is not about perfection or arriving at a final destination. It's an ongoing process, a practice of continually aligning with your truth as you grow and evolve. It's about trusting that who you are at your core is enough and that you have the strength to let go of anything that no longer supports your journey. The world doesn't need a louder, shinier version of you. It needs the real you. In a society that thrives on comparison and curated perfection, there's constant pressure to enhance, amplify, and polish every aspect of who you are. Social media, career expectations, and cultural norms all seem to demand that you present an idealized version of yourself, one that is always confident, productive, and successful. But in striving to meet these expectations, you risk losing the very essence of what makes you unique. The world doesn't benefit from more versions of the same idealized archetype. What it truly needs is people who are brave enough to show up as their authentic selves, unpolished and unapologetic. Authenticity is a form of courage. It means being willing to stand in your truth, even when it's messy, imperfect, or vulnerable. It's about embracing the parts of yourself that you've been told to hide or change, the parts that make you different, the parts that make you human. Authenticity isn't about perfection. It's about wholeness. It's about showing up as you are, not as you think you should be, and trusting that your uniqueness has value. Being your real self in a world that rewards conformity can feel risky. There's a fear that if you stop performing or pretending, you'll be rejected or judged. But the truth is, trying to please everyone or fit into every mold only leads to exhaustion and a deep sense of disconnect. When you prioritize being liked or accepted over being real, you deprive yourself in the world of the depth and richness of your true self. Authenticity allows you to build deeper, more meaningful connections because it invites others to see and connect with the real you, not the version of you that is performing for their approval. The world needs the real you because authenticity inspires authenticity. When you show up as you truly are, you give others permission to do the same. Your courage to be real can be a light for someone else who is struggling to embrace their own truth. Authenticity has a ripple effect. It creates spaces where people feel safe to bring their full selves, where vulnerability is met with empathy, and where diversity of thought and experience is celebrated. This kind of authenticity fosters creativity, collaboration, and connection in ways that polished performances never can. Being the real you doesn't mean you have to share everything with everyone or never experience self-doubt. It simply means living in alignment with your values and your truth. It means showing up in a way that feels genuine to you, even if it doesn't look like what others expect. The world doesn't need another version of what's already been done. It needs your unique perspective, your lived experiences, and your voice. These are the things that can create change, inspire others, and add something truly meaningful to the world. Your real self, with all its imperfections, is enough. It's what makes you relatable, approachable, and human. The pressure to shine brighter or be louder can lead to burnout, but showing up authentically creates a sustainable energy because it requires less effort to maintain. You don't have to prove your worth or compete for attention when you're grounded in who you truly are. Instead, you can focus on the things that matter most to you, the things that align with your purpose and passions. Authenticity is not just freeing for you, it's a gift to everyone around you because it creates space for deeper understanding, mutual respect, and genuine connection. In the end, disappearing is not about running away, it's about stepping into your truest self. It's about having the courage to let go of external validation, shed the layers that no longer serve you, and create space for healing, reflection, and realignment. In stillness and solitude, You discover the power of transformation, reconnecting with your authentic self and understanding that your worth was never tied to the noise of the world. The real you in all your imperfect authenticity is what the world truly needs. Disappearing isn't the end, it's the beginning of showing up for yourself and in turn for others in a way that is honest, grounded, and whole.